been a hot minute since, can you stop moving? Since I've made a video. Where am I? Oh my goodness. I've just been having a mental health break, as I should. But now that I'm feeling a bit better, I am back at it again. So let's get started. So hi again, my name is Meredith, and in this episode of the documentary series, I will be talking about OCD. Okay, so OCD is something that I mildly suffer with. I have symptoms. It stems from my anxiety. It's actually quite common for those people with anxiety to develop symptoms of OCD because they're kind of just interlinked in more of that fear and nervousness aspect. So I don't fully suffer from it, which I am kind of grateful for that because I know that it is a handful to have full-on OCD. But let's talk about it. Okay, so reading from my definition, what is OCD? It is, it stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. It is a personality/anxiety disorder in which people have recurring unwanted thoughts, ideas, or sensations that cause them to feel driven to do something repetitively. So in order to break this down, I will be reading off of my note sheet because at the moment I don't have the mental capacity to fully remember everything that I've written down. So you're gonna see me look down a lot. There's just my notebook down here. But to break down OCD, so Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, the obsessive portion is where an idea, an urge, an impulse, a fear can dominate one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea, image, desire, etc. It could be something like the placement of an object, or maybe the way someone said something, or even, you know, the fact that this person may have to do something that they don't really want to do, or they have to do something that will trigger compulsions and obsessions. So that is the obsessive part, is those persistent, constant thoughts in your brain that get really freaking annoying after a while. So then we have compulsive, which is a strong, usually irresistible impulse to perform an act, especially one that is irrational or contrary to one's will. So that could be, you know, after obsessing about whatever it is that the person is obsessing about, they now have that very strong urge to act upon that thought, that obsession. And it is usually something they cannot control, contain, or resist. And then the last part, it's a disorder. It is something that affects your brain. Okay, so still looking at my note sheet because I don't think I could go unscripted for this. And also, if I do go unscripted for this portion, which is very factual, I might say things incorrectly and I don't want to misinform people. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 different forms of OCD, or like there's 7 different classifications. For these classifications, you do not have to identify with just one. I personally identify with multiple because, you know, it's different for everyone. Of course, mental health and illnesses are very subjective. But just to get a better understanding, I will be explaining the like top 7 different forms because since it is subjective, people could experience these different forms differently, as well as it could be more than one form, more than one instance where someone, you know, applies to the different versions of OCD. So, okay. There is checking, contamination, mental contamination, hoarding, ruminations, and intrusive thoughts. So let's unpack that. So checking is something like, you know, someone feels the impulse or need to lock and unlock doors multiple times until they get it right. Flicking light switches on and off, or constantly rereading something to make sure they get either all of the information down or they understand everything fully. And this form of OCD is full of anxiety. They feel as though, oh yes, the AC came on. They feel as though if they do not constantly check or do these actions repetitively, something bad might happen. This could also come in the form of constantly checking in on loved ones, obsessively researching the symptoms of an illness to make sure that they do or do not have it, or it can be like constantly asking for reassurance from family members, loved ones, friends to make sure that they are not a burden. I do that a lot. I identify with checking because I do have a tendency to believe that all of my friends don't like me. And the way that I do this is that I will check on them by constantly gift giving. And that is quite a problem of mine. And I'll get into that later, but those who know me know that I'm just handing out gifts all the time just to make sure that people still like me. It's that checking aspect that I'm making sure that I am still not a burden, that people actually enjoy my presence. The next form of OCD is contamination, and this is the one that people know the best. It's basically where people have that fear, people with OCD have the fear of either going out into public places, being too close to people, touching things like doors, doorknobs, handles, all of those little places where germs manifest themselves. And they're just constantly cleaning, constantly looking for the symmetry and the, cleanliness that they are seeking because they're just so afraid of contracting a disease. So an example of this could be this form of OCD could manifest within someone. This is very extreme, but for example, some person with contamination OCD could go out and buy an entire box of bars of soap, and they'll bring that home, and every single time they need to wash their hands, they will take a new bar of soap, open it up, use it once, and then throw it away because now it's contaminated. And they will do that whenever they have to wash their hands. So it's pretty intense. Contamination OCD is a very intense form. So mental contamination is a subcategory of contamination. It's basically where it's just like internal uncleanliness. This can be brought on by psychological experiences, like poor social experiences that this person has gone through. For example, if they have a conversation with someone and maybe this person used a different tone of voice, or their body movements or actions were different, whatever it may be, and this person with mental contamination OCD interprets that as like a bad sign, they will think poorly upon themselves and then proceed to, for example, like consistently wash their body to try and wash away their obsession about like the way that person said this one word. It's very, very, like they will pinpoint random things, very specific things about a person, or it could be something very basic and broad where like this person was just, kind of being rude to them, and now they feel like they're a burden, so they need to wash themselves clean and make themselves different. So their emotional damage from an experience with someone could cause the very intense and repetitive compulsions. The next form is hoarding, and this one is pretty well known because it's, like there's those hoarding shows where people go in and clean out old people's houses that are just full of crap. So with hoarding, there is the inability to discard of items. There's the inability to resist the urge to buy seemingly useless things. Usually when this happens, there's either an emotional value to these items, or there is just like that thought in their head where like, oh, I can't throw this away, I will need it later. And this is very dangerous. People with hoarding OCD put themselves in a lot of danger because they are subject to countless diseases, countless different sicknesses. Things are growing and bacteria is spreading and you have trash all over your house because you just can't make yourself throw it out. They just find it so unbelievably difficult to organize these items and, you know, go through them and figure out what they need and don't need, that they just don't get rid of anything, and it just piles up everywhere. Next, there is ruminations, and ruminations is where usually when someone experiences OCD, they have these chains of thought that are like the repetitive, obsessive thoughts that, you know, you would normally get within OCD. And usually, like I do this too, they'll try to like push it away and not think about it. When someone is suffering with like the ruminations version of OCD, instead of trying to resist the thoughts and compulsions, they will instead indulge in them and sit through a chain of thought that is just full of obsessive, random, like intrusive thoughts that they just don't like feel like getting rid of. So they will stay in this train of thought of all these different thoughts for a very long time, and these thoughts are seemingly unproductive and useless. So I'm not entirely sure how long those prolonged periods of time last, but I know that they're spending time thinking about things that they don't need to think about, and they're kind of stuck at that point. And then there are intrusive thoughts, and this kind of relates to everyone with OCD. Intrusive thoughts can be in the form of, like, either they could be sexual in relation to relationships, family members, it could concern the symmetry, the placement of items, whatever it might be. These intrusive thoughts will bombard your brain, and it can be really damaging. They're really disturbing, scary, and damaging. And they're random. They're intrusive. They pop up, and you kind of just have to deal with it after that. Usually when you receive these intrusive thoughts, you start to obsess about it because, like, you're either trying to get rid of it, or you're now stuck in a thought process like, oh, maybe I should act upon this, and you start to get the compulsions and start to act upon it, and it's just a whole vicious cycle. And I hate it. So unfortunately for this episode, I do not have a variety of sources like I had for anxiety and depression. Since OCD is not, and I hate to say this, it's not one of the mainstream illnesses, it was very difficult for me to find people who unfortunately suffer from this illness. So I have me, where I have OCD-like tendencies, it's not full-blown, and then I have 2 other people in this episode who do experience symptoms and the illness as a whole. With that being said, with all the other illnesses and episodes I'm making, of course I'm making the statement that it is very subjective, so this is basically just tailored to the 3 of us, what we're going to be talking about, and I do encourage you to do your own research because we're going to give you a very broad baseline of this illness, but it doesn't apply to everyone in the world, or everyone who experiences this illness. So I do have sources linked below that you can go and look into and research on your own. I do highly suggest that you do that. But we're just gonna get started, and I hope that at least this episode will give you a better understanding of this illness.
Disclaimer, I do have like mild OCD. I'm not like the best example of what someone who has like extreme OCD goes through, but like, yeah, it's like just something happens and I can't like move on until I fix that thing. I can't think about anything else until I fix that thing. I just sort of try to distract myself with something else and just try to move on, just forget about it.
So what are some things that like cause the repetitive thoughts?
Honestly, for me, it's usually like numbers things. Like things have to be even numbers. At work, sometimes when I'm filling a shelf, there has to be like an even number of things left in the box, or I try to shove more on the shelf. Or like for milk crates, there are 4 in one crate, and if I can't get like an even number up, it really bugs me having to put an odd number back in the shelf. And like stuff like that I can't really change anything about because there's only so much space on the shelf, and I also need that to be like perfectly even. So I don't know, I just try to move on, go on to a new task.
They're very prominent and repetitive in your head to the point where it's like you sort of like question if that's actually going to happen or not. And to kind of like cope with it, you do certain movements or actions. So for some people, it's me specifically, it would be like turning off a light switch set amount of times so that nothing bad would like happen to my family or me. And these fears weren't really like backed by any evidence, but for other people it's different. So now I don't really have frequent unwanted thoughts. It's sort of more, I would say, generalized anxiety than as severe as OCD, but I have been able to get not rid of it, but like calm it down, I guess, through like therapy and medication. And that has certainly helped. That's a huge way of coping.
My dad just turned the weed whacker on and the sun is gone. Damn. Hold on, I'm gonna see when the sun comes back. That's a big ass cloud, what the hell? You know what? You know what? I'm just gonna start talking anyway. I don't care anymore. I gotta get this done. I'm just gonna keep going, and I hope that you can hear me over him. But okay. So yes, I do have frequent unwanted thoughts that are just in my brain all the time. They're usually about like people in my life or my friends or my family. It's usually like I have the constant fear that, you know, my friends don't like me, or after having a conversation with them, the way I said certain things means that they don't like me anymore. I am one of those people who, oh my god, you're so loud. I'm gonna keep going. I am one of those people who will hyperfixate on people's body movements and like tones of voice. And, you know, if their tone of voice is different, or if they have a certain body movement around me, I will hyperfixate on that and start to obsess and think that just because, you know, they sneezed, for example, they don't like me anymore. And that is detrimental to my mental health, but that does happen sometimes with me.
So again, now I don't really have those sort of like compulsions, but when I did, it would be like turning off the light switch a certain number of times. Maybe this one was like really weird. It would be like after I was like taking a shower, I'd have to like turn the faucet, I don't really know what it's called, but the temperature thing like a certain way every time, and if I didn't, I'd like focus on doing that even if I was like late for school, which was not helpful at all, but I like felt compelled to do it so that like these random like bad things would not happen. Like, oh, I'll get in a plane crash next month when like I'm traveling somewhere. Like that was one of my big fears that I used to have, and it wasn't really backed by anything.
There are a couple rituals within my life that do take up a lot of time. One of them is my room. That is something that is very common amongst people with OCD, where they are very clean. But of course, it's a vicious stereotype that does not apply to everyone with OCD, but it definitely happens with me. My room needs to be clean. It's annoying because I will go through this ritual like every other day where I will walk around my room and I will look closely at every single item and the way that it's placed, and I will make sure that everything is at the right angle, in its right place, and I will walk around my room for about like 30 minutes just doing that. My perception of myself, you know, I must look a certain way before leaving the house, and that takes a lot of time. If I don't look a certain way, then I'm gonna get irritated with myself. That's why I used to wake up so freaking early for school. I used to wake up at 5 in the morning for school. When like school didn't start until like 7:45. Like I'd be up at 5. And usually, you know, I would pick out an outfit, I would do my hair and do my makeup, and I would like be in the bathroom for an hour making sure that everything looks right so that I don't have to worry about my appearance when I leave the house. But I've been able to master the act of deceiving myself. I will choose one thing, like either it's the outfit, the hair, or my face. And I'll make one thing look really good so that when I leave the house, it's like, oh, well, you're not wearing good clothes, your hair's not done, but at least my face looks good. That's how I will counteract that. But sometimes when I was getting ready for school, if things didn't look right, if my hair didn't look right, it would take about 2 hours for me to leave the house. And that's why I'd wake up at 5 a.m. every day. So this illness greatly affects my social life. I am constantly worried about people's perception of me. I am always, you know, trying to be positive around people, throwing positive comments, you know, putting on that facade, changing my personality for people, and it's a lot of work, it is, and it's obsessive, and that's the compulsive act that comes out of it. So I do this thing, which is gift giving. That is one of the biggest OCD things that I do. And people who are friends with me know that if you are good friends with me, I'm chucking gifts at you just to make sure you still like me. Like, I don't think people realize that, like my friends realize that, but the reason why I will give you so many things, I will gift give all the time, is because I'm just making sure that you still like me. Like, it's kind of embarrassing sometimes because I have like my two best friends, they don't know that they both do this, but like they both have dedicated areas in their rooms that are just filled with things that I've given them. And it's kind of because like, well, I don't normally go to like one of my best friend's house that often, but I go to my other best friend's house a lot, and she literally has like a dresser and the top of it is like a shrine to me. I think my other best friend has like a little windowsill with things all over it, but it's like when I see that, it's like, it's nice, like I've been gift giving for you, but it's also a nice visual for me to understand like that's a lot. You've given this person a lot of things, like not that like as you should, they deserve it, but also the fact that like maybe you don't need to do that. Some misconceptions about this illness. Something I want to really quickly talk about without getting a bit like not too heated, because I will get very angry about this. For example, you're talking with someone and you put your pen on their desk and they immediately get mad at you for the placement of that pen. And they're like, oh my god, you're messing with my OCD, you can't put the pen like that, it's so messy. I immediately lose respect for people who throw around OCD like it's nothing. Like if you're only just particular and organized and you think it's okay to just like relate that to an illness that you don't even have, no, please don't do that. Like when someone is talking to me and they're like, oh my god, I'm so OCD, like I clean all the time, I need things to be clean. Usually when someone says that to me or says it in a group, I will respectfully challenge them. Like I'll go up to them and I'll be like, hey, are you diagnosed with OCD? Or do you have a specific anxiety disorder? Like, I will respectfully, in the best way possible, I will respectfully ask that. And they'll look at me and they'll be like, no, I just really like things to be clean. And it's like, so you don't have OCD, you're just particular and organized. Don't say that. You can't just throw around a term like it's nothing. Like, I don't want to be that person who invalidates someone's needs and tendencies, but when you're throwing around an illness that doesn't even apply to you and acting as though it does, that's not okay. You cannot do that. And it really pisses me off because, like, I don't even fully suffer from OCD, but you can't even imagine what it's like. Even having symptoms and tendencies of OCD, it sucks. It is not fun. And the fact that, like, people will do that, they'll just be like, oh, I'm so OCD. Oh, you can't do that. It'll mess with my OCD. No, don't do that. Just say you like being clean. Also, the misconception that OCD revolves around people just being intensely clean. That is not true. It applies to a lot of people, and in the mainstream media, OCD is shown as people being obsessively clean, but that doesn't apply to everyone. It doesn't. I'm getting really heated, oh my god. Not everything with OCD is about being clean. I mean, yes, I like to be clean. That is like a personal interest, also a tad bit OCD. It's a nice gray area. However, not everything that falls under OCD is just being clean. Our lives are controlled by obsessive and compulsive thoughts. Something that a lot of people fail to understand is that these thoughts are terrifying sometimes. Like, they are intense, they are unwarranted, you cannot resist them, you have to act upon them, or else they will not go away. For example, with me gift giving, if I know that I've said this before, but like sometimes the thoughts will get very intense. If I do not give someone a gift or compliment them or be kind to a certain person, the thoughts in my head will be like, you're a horrible person, no one likes you, if you don't do this, no one will ever like you, you'll be alone for the rest of your life. Those are thoughts that genuinely go through my mind. And I don't think an organized and particular person understands what that feels like. So when people like that throw around terms just thinking that everything about OCD is just being clean, you're so unbelievably wrong. Like, you are not within your rights to say that. There's also the fact that people with OCD will avoid certain particular situations just so that it doesn't trigger any sort of obsession or compulsions. For example, I will either avoid talking to someone or avoid looking at certain spots in my house because they're messy, to not obsess about it, to not get the compulsive aspect and force myself to go clean or go talk to that person when I honestly don't feel like doing it. That's kind of scary too. Like, a lot of people with OCD will avoid like specific situations so that they don't get stuck in that repetitive mindset that is so damaging. There's just so much more to OCD that a lot of people don't understand, and they fail to notice because they're not taking the time to educate themselves on the subject. Final summation, OCD can be unbelievably terrifying to deal with. And I feel like a lot of people just don't look at it that way. They just think that we like being clean, when like 9 times out of 10 that isn't the case. Like, I would love to have a messy room and just like not care where I put things, but I can't be that person. I can't. Because if I try to do that, my brain will like verbally assault me. Like, it's not, gosh. Okay. Anyway, just do some research. Maybe ask someone who genuinely suffers from OCD what it's like. please stop throwing those terms around because they're not yours to throw around. Some ways you can help someone who is experiencing their OCD tendencies or is going through an obsessive compulsive moment. I'm gonna say this again, a pro-con list. It is so great, especially when you're receiving the visual of, you know, what's good and bad about this obsessive thought of yours or this compulsive act of yours. Helping someone create a pro and con list about an obsessive thought or action really helps them understand like where they are mentally and what they should and shouldn't be doing. In addition, of course, I'm going to be saying this in every episode, opening up conversation and asking how you can help. That works so well. And it also gives you a better understanding of what your friend, loved one, or family member is going through. If it revolves around cleaning, you can ask to help them. Or if they are too particular about the way that they're cleaning and don't want you to help, you can ask them to explain why things need to be a certain way or explain why they are cleaning, because you can get a better understanding through that and then help them move forward within the situation. I will do that with myself, and I know that my mom does that with me. Like when I'm cleaning my room, she'll be like, are you okay? Do you want to talk about something? And then I'll probably like talk with her about it. But I know that opening up that conversation and getting a better understanding and knowing what to do in the future in terms of whether it's cleaning or people pleasing or gift giving or whatever it may be, even in relation to the 7 different types of OCD, like if it's hoarding or the ruminations or the contamination, getting that better understanding will help you move forward with the person that you are speaking with who suffers from OCD. That was a lot. Creating that bond with someone where it allows them to feel as though they are comfortable enough to express what's actually going on in their brain means everything. For me, I really enjoy it when, you know, my mom will come in and see that I'm cleaning or redecorating, and she'll like sit me down and be like, do you want to talk about anything? Because then it opens up a playing field where I'm like, yes, I do. And we'll talk about whatever I need to talk about, and it makes me feel better, and then I won't need to clean for a little bit. But yes, creating that bond with the person that you care about who is going through an OCD moment really helps them move forward and learn how to, like you and that person can then learn how to successfully move forward and, you know, find different strategies to help them whenever they feel as though they're obsessing over something or they're becoming like impulsive based off of their obsessive thoughts, whatever it may be. It really helps just to open up that conversation and create that bond and just be there for them and just listen, because listening is the best thing you can do. So that's about it for this episode. Thank you for joining me and talking about OCD with me. Again, I have some sources linked below. They are very broad, and so is this video. So I really hope that you are able to, you know, take that next step and perform your own researching process, because I really, this illness just goes over so many people's heads, and I really think that a lot of people need to be more educated on it. But thank you for being here. If you have any questions, you can contact me. I'm also leaving the normal sources I usually do at the end of this video. Any other things you'd like to say about OCD, please leave them in the comments below. I think that's everything I wanted to say. Yes, okay. Thank you, bye.